A brief history of the evolution of story apps and interactivity. In the beginning, a lot of story apps looked like books, refit to live on the tablet or mobile screen. Publishers moved to digital with trepidation, if at all. They made story apps using tried and true content, properties that had survived the test of time in print, content by known authors, already in the public domain, or whose rights they owned or obtained. To distinguish them from their print cousins, these apps used technical bells and whistles that definitely took advantage of the digital form, but they were too often jabby. That is to say, they weren't necessarily intuitive. They didn't give hints to interactivity and resulted in kids just prodding at the screen, looking for what would move or react. Here I am prodding at the screen of Miss Spider's Tea Party, and while I do get some hints to interactivity when I touch those objects,
I had friends like these.
they interrupt the narrative, for one, and they don't really seem to serve the content in any way. The earliest apps tended to be very flippy. They simply replicated pages turning in a book by tapping at the right and left arrows at the bottom of the screen, or by swiping left and right. The earliest apps were often very noisy, with canned sounds, annoying music that couldn't be turned off, and really sometimes very unpleasant voiceovers.
Some ants strode in. They numbered 6.
Some of our early apps offered no scaffolding for the emerging reader. There was no highlighting of text or single word touch activation. But the fact is, this is a counting book. And yet when I touch the ants, they just say no, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So as beautiful as this is, the interactivity just really doesn't augment, enhance, or complement the content in any way. Also in the beginning, while print publishers were slowly moving toward digital, developers with impressive technical chops were busy racing to the App Store, more often with original story content, but content that bypassed traditional gatekeepers. These properties tended to lack story quality. Some weren't really even stories at all.
On a very fine day, rat-a-tat, with his drum and his hat, rat-a-tat, rat-a-tat. He came into town and he walked down the street as he drummed out a beat, rat-a-tat, rat-a-tat. His shoes went tip-tap with a rat-a-tat-tat, and he tipped his hat with a rat-a-tip-tap, and he smiled to the crowds that he passed on the street as he drummed out a beat, rat-a-tat, rat-a-tat.
Lots tried to rhyme, but really didn't.
Quicker than a chicken, hopping with a plum. Run, 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 run.
And in general, interactivity did not serve the content.
The Tale of Peter Rabbit. Once upon a time there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree.
Animations of background characters left you feeling, so what?
He ran on 4 legs.
Games embedded in the text often sent the reader so far outside the story they never really wanted to return, even with poor Peter at his greatest moment of peril.
It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new.
And some added an interesting effect to the story, but really did little else.
Far out at sea, where the water is clear but very deep, the merfolk live. Strange trees and plants grow on the seabed, fish swim among them, and the Sea King's castle with its coral walls and amber windows lies in the deepest place of all.
At new conferences such as Digital Book World, O'Reilly's Tools of Change in Publishing, developers and publishers got together and really started talking. That was really the beginning of the Middle Ages, when story apps began to grow up and to grow into their format. We started to see much more scaffolding for the emerging reader.
You can think up some birds. That's what you can do. Blue, You can think about yellow, path, or think about blue.
Birds.
She grabbed the
Audio quality greatly improved, with statistics that showed us that readers, they'll let you get away with not so top quality video, but audio, it has to be good. And then the static, scanned, formerly print page gave way to animation of picture book art.
Shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes.
And the iPad came to life.
Shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes.
We also started to see creative ways to advance the story. Rather than just mimicking page turns, we started to see more scrolling and swiping, not just left and right, but also up and down.
Meet Franklin. Franklin is a frog. When Franklin is on land, he doesn't walk or crawl. He jumps instead. Swipe me to see me jump. But that's not the only way Franklin gets around. He swims underwater too.
Sound options such as on-off buttons, read to me versus let me read myself, even let me record myself, started to give readers a lot more choices for personal interaction.
Lovely girl called Cinderella, who lived with her stepmother and two mean stepsisters. Can you help me put the fruit into the bowl?
You never see apps anymore that don't indicate for the user where
Thanks
they
for
will
all your
find
help.
interactivity.
Many hands make light work.
And activities tend more and more to be content specific, related directly
Thanks for
to
all
the
your
narrative.
help.
No one knew exactly where it was, but Millie had a pretty good hunch. So one day, she hopped in her plane and flew to a remote island, far, far away.
But most importantly, interactivity was more and more seen to be complementing, augmenting, enhancing, and otherwise just making sense with the narrative text. Before long, the iPad revealed itself as a powerful teaching tool, so intuitive that even the youngest child could figure out how to use it. And the potential it has for the learning challenged, we've only really just begun to tap that, but it is vast. It turns out the iPad is really good for introducing nonfiction and big concepts in captivating and understandable ways.
An ant. Let's find out about ants.
Franklin waits until nighttime and uses a special call to attract a female. Here comes Felicity. In the spring, Felicity lays her frog spawn. The eggs are ready to hatch now. As Fraser Tadpole grows, his body starts to change shape too. By the summer, Fraser has become a froglet and is ready to leave the pond.
Birds can see ultraviolet light, which we humans cannot. This allows birds to experience many more colors than us.
The iPad is also capable of teaching basic skills through play-like but educational games and activities.
Bellow. B. E. W. Bellow to bellow is to yell in a deep voice.
Pretty soon we were seeing that interactivity need not be limited to the relationship between the reader user and the device, but it could also take place between users sharing a device,
P.
or between the reader user and a character in the story.
Oh, hello everybody.
Hello.
Today, readers and users of apps are offered more choices than ever before, like the latest release from Nosy Crow, Little Red Riding Hood, that gives the reader, throughout the story narrative, 3 points at which to make choices about how the story will evolve.
She came to another fork in the path. Shall I take the path to the thistle?
So indeed, interactivity is serving story content more and more. It is pulling readers in and keeping them there. It is making them part of the story.
Fork in the path.
At the Tools of Change in Publishing Conference that launched the March 2013 Bologna Children's Book Fair, and at the subsequent talks and interviews that took place all week at the fair's 3rd annual Digital Cafe, one heard over and over again the same message. Apps have grown up. It's time to stop scanning old story content and squashing it onto the screen. Digital formats offer new ways of telling and receiving stories, and therefore deserve new content created specifically for the form. Some properties are better left to print, others may never work in print and should be published directly to digital. Still others are suitable across multiple formats, print, digital, etc., if reworked and adapted to each form. Also in Bologna, we started to hear more and more about the new kid on the block, the hybrid author or hybrid illustrator, the person who's producing in multiple formats, creative people willing to experiment. Because we're not just talking about high-budget masterpieces made by teams of collaborating experts that are finding a bit of success in the digital environment. There are many wonderful works emerging from small startups, individual artists, and virtual unknowns alike. Take this delightful app from a Spanish company. Built simply on an authoring tool, it managed to rise to the top of 243 entrants and win the 2013 Bologna Digital Ragazzi Award. 4 corners. It's a great story. It offers an enduring message without hitting you over the head with it. It's simple yet visually pleasing. It scaffolds language for the emerging reader. It provides clear, understandable hints at interactivity. It both serves and augments the story. And while it may still be flippy, all other aspects of the app shine through. So on this point, it is easily forgiven.
You have to make yourself round. Little Square is different. We'll just have to cut your corners off.
They finally realise that it's not Little Square who has to change his shape.
It's the door.
So they cut out 4 corners, 4 little corners.